All right, welcome again to Social Distillation, the submarine still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the beat and pour white lightning straight on your brain. What are we talking about today, Samuel?
Well, we're gonna have fun, and it looks like It looks like he's feeling how my shirt says here. If you're just watching, I've got Kermit and Yoda, and Yoda's comforting Kermit, and it says, "Easy being green is it is not," because we're talking
No.
relationships today,
Yes.
and well, actually, we're talking male-female dynamics, and the hopefully this kind of clear some water because I was just looking back, and one of the most popular episodes we've recently had was our now I just blanked on the name.
Helen Anders.
Helen Andrews episode where she wrote the feminism taking over the world article, and she was blown up in the world because of it.
Mhm.
And we commented on it, and we I think got like 10 followers from that one. It's like between that one and Andrew and not Andrew, Nick Fuentes hating, we get followers. And so we can also hate on Andrew Tate today, and get some more followers maybe. But we're gonna talk those dynamics and why it actually matters. I'm gonna use some statistical language, but I'm gonna make it like real people talk,
So
statistical language to go forward. But go
I'm
ahead and
curious where you're going with this because I had said I wanted to back up for a second real quick and go back over something we talked about last time that I've said before. And it for anyone watching, by the way, I'm not trying to be cool. I have sunglasses on because the light hurts my eyes because I have a migraine and it's
yeah,
it's
don't
a
listen to him. It's a hangover.
it's a winter apocalypse out there, which is why I've got such nice bright light coming through because we've still got 2 whole inches of ice and snow on the ground. It's isomorphic. I don't even think you could have managed to live. We're all dying here. It's North Texas is a winter wasteland. But anyway,
Oh, we got just enough freezing to kill any plants you'd planted last year. So
yeah.
yeah,
Well,
that's how we roll in Houston. It freezes
not
for
not
2 days, kills all your effort, and then becomes humid and hot again.
whatever weeds are taking over my garden boxes are apparently immune to the frost because they're still green and I'm annoyed. But
Well, my
anyway,
mutant spinach that keeps growing all over the yard is immune to it too. So who
well,
knows?
there you go. Um, So it just so happened that my wife walked by and heard when I was talking about ranting about the idea that of representation in media of look, it doesn't matter who you are, whatever the ethnicity, gender, background, melanin of the skin of the hero of the story, you should be able to learn from it. And you had played Cat Williams, you saying something similar, along that train of thought on Theo Vaughn's show about, hey, just list out all the crap that you've had to deal with in your life, and that's a hero's journey, and that's the point of why we spend so much time on Saturdays talking about stories because
Hmm.
that informs. She kind of disagreed, and it made me remember something that I've said before, which is, you know, Ben Shapiro when he really started to blow up, and he would always say, confronting college students, facts don't care about your feelings. Well, that's true, but we aren't all midget, autistic, Jewish android cyborgs who have no feelings like him. We are emotional beings as well. So facts
Hmm.
don't care about your feelings. 1 + 1 = 2. But your feelings don't care about your facts.
Hmm.
So that is one of the problems with, based whoever destroys him. Okay, so she didn't care. Anyone like her didn't care. So, like, for my wife, non-white, growing up in a majority, well, I think where she grew up, it was mostly certain types of Asian and Hispanic, and then some white. But it actually did matter to her
Hmm.
to see, like, the example she used is if she went to, like a sleepover birthday party with friends in elementary school and they're all dressing up as Disney princesses. Well, until Mulan came out, who is she going to dress up as? And I'm like, well, you just dress up as whoever you want. She said, but it feels weird.
Hmm.
Like, you know what? That's a good point. That on some level, it does help to see someone like you, quote unquote, being able to achieve, being able to do. I think the problem comes in where it has become toxic is this idea that only that can
Mhm.
inspire you.
Well, and it was the messaging around it too. It was like, we did this to inspire this group of people, and if
Hmm.
it doesn't inspire you, you're a bigot. And it wasn't the this is there for this group of people. It was the you have to embrace it too part of it. But I'll give a male example of your wife's Mulan uh, predicament. There is we talked about Predator last time.
Mm.
You know, you got Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's bigger than life. He's Hercules. He's in Predator. He's all of these things, and he's a massive bodybuilder. But who do we identify? Who did we identify with a lot in the 80s? Rocky.
Mm.
Rocky was the everyman that just wanted to be something.
He got his shot. Yeah.
He got his shot. He just wanted a chance. And that's why Rocky blew up because yeah, Arnold's character in Predator was fantastic for us. In Terminator is fantastic for us,
Hmm.
but it took a fantastical situation for us to be able to identify. It's like, oh, well, yeah, there's this alien being that's bigger than life, killing everybody. Arnold's the hero. But if you put Arnold in Rocky, if Dolph Lundgren was the main character in Rocky, it wouldn't have hit the same.
Yeah.
You needed Rocky fighting Dolph Lundgren.
Well, yeah, and the reason the first movie wasn't an Academy Award, I don't remember if it won, but it was nominated, was the depth of the story because not only was he the everyman who got his shot, but he has that great monologue where he's talking to Adrian and I don't even want to win. I just want to go the distance
Hmm.
because no one's ever gone the distance with Apollo. He was that good of a fighter. He always knocked people out. You know, he's like, I just want to go the distance to show that I'm somebody, to show
Hmm.
that I can do it. Yeah.
Yeah. So that brings it together. But let's get to the actual dynamic here. Where Helen Andrews' conversation comes into this is because she talks about how every legitimate, not every organization that matters, every institution, I think is the right word, that matters is being taken over by the feminine. And I'm going to use the words
Mhm.
masculine and feminine here instead of
Yeah.
male and female. Uh, and part of that is because of the push, the political push, and part of that is because it's just naturally occurring in a disconnected from nature environment that we are. If you want patriarchy, let's go to the wild. Okay, let's have lions and tigers and bears all around and enemy tribes and everything. Then you'll have patriarchy. But this AC laptop class era we live in is actually advantageous for the feminine. But the problem is we have uh, differences in ways of thinking. And just because you're more adapted to an environment doesn't mean your way of thinking is going to lead to the best result. And the reason why I wanted to point to statistics is I want to bring up a visual here. What we talk about in studies is you can have two types of errors. You can have a type 1 or a type 2 error. And for those that can see it, on the top you have reality, true or false, and then on the left, on the y-axis, you have measured or perceived
Mm.
data. Okay, so if I'm doing a study and my measurements are false compared to reality, that's a type 2 error. That's the false negative, right? So that means my measurement tool wasn't proper for measuring the job. Okay, so if I was measuring, I don't know, personality traits. We'll bring those up here in a second. If I was measuring narcissism in a population and I had a bad tool for assessing that, I would probably get a bunch of false negatives, right? And when your perceived measure is true, but what you're seeing in reality, that's a false positive. All right. So uh, what we see in males, let me give another representation here. So type 1 error is when you support the alternative hypothesis. So say I say, we'll go back, we'll get us banned retroactively. If I say ivermectin helps with COVID and I get data that supports that, but it's actually not true, that's a type 1 error. So my data supports something that's not actually true. Type 1 error. I support the alternate hypothesis. I say I come to the conclusion, but it's wrong. If I report that it does nothing, but it actually did, that's a type 2 error. So you see where those kind of cross. So I report that the null hypothesis, which is nothing, the ivermectin doesn't work, but it's actually helping. I just measured it wrong. That's a type 2 error. And what we see is females typically get false positives because of their negativity bias, where males typically get false negatives. Wait, did I get that backwards? It,
It's the meme you shared of what is it like 90% of men think they're better in a fight than they actually are.
yeah, because we report the positive, which is I'm great in a fight when it's not actual reality. Where women will report, and I've got one here. This is kind of pop culture type stuff, but it is the message out there. 35% of women say they dated a psychopath, 42% say they dated a sociopath, 55 say they dated a narcissist. But statistically, only 1.5% are males or psychopaths, 4% are sociopaths, and only 6% of are narcissists. So we've got a lot of false positives
Mhm.
out there. Now, false positives are good in some situations. We'll go back to COVID. The test was actually skewed to be to err to the side of a false positive. Because if you are in a true pandemic situation, you would rather tell somebody they're sick and have them stay home than tell somebody they're not sick and then go spread it, right? So a false
Mhm.
negative in that situation would be bad. The test was skewed to a false positive. Now we saw for political reasons it was over skewed for false positives, but that's the difference we have with kind of male female dynamics. So if a situation like growing a company, you're going to want somebody in charge that's actually going to err towards false negatives. So that's actually going to be a go-getter. That's going to go out there and try things. You want that guy who thinks he's more effective in a fight than he actually is, because they'll go out and win.
Risk taking
Risk taking. Yeah.
you talked about risk taking. I don't remember an episode or two ago because you brought up poker
And
that
chess. Yeah.
yeah, poker and chess. Well, you would think why would there be any difference in males or females? There should be could be one league, and they should be roughly statistically equal. You would think, per capita based on however many women are actually involved in that, but actually no, that there is a guy I found watching clips from Kill Tony, which I don't really like Tony, but he has some of the people on the show are funny. Ari Matti, the
Oh
Estonian
yeah. Yeah.
guy, and
Right.
he has a bit about this, about how he discovered there was a women's chess league, and he makes a joke, but the point is that it's not just the mental capacity, it's not just the physical capacity. Aggression and risk taking are a huge factor in these kinds of things, and men are much more prone to do those things.
hmm
It's usually the boy you're having to say, "Hey, get down from there, you're going to fall and break something." But not always. My youngest granddaughter is
But that's why that's
um
why I used
yeah,
masculine and feminine instead of male
exactly.
female. Now, but let's now look at one of the institutions that's taken over, which is HR, right?
Mm,
So what damage can be done with a false negative, with that masculine type of thinking where I think I'm better at something than I am? Well, we could have a situation where a man thinks that a female coworker is into him, which is more likely for a male to think a female is into them than the other way around. And maybe he advances on that and an inappropriate situation comes up, right? But the people in charge of that, the people making the rules, the people responsible for the hiring and firing, what if we get false positives? What if guy walks in room and says, "Hey Susie, how you doing today? Did you have a great weekend?" And then starts filling his coffee and she's like, "Oh my God, he's hitting on me." and goes to HR, and we get a false positive there. He wasn't hitting on her. He was
Unless he's a
being
six six
nice.
six, and then it's ooh, he's hitting on me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, don't let's not go there with this conversation, but
All right.
yeah, yeah. But you get that false positive, and now all of a sudden somebody lost their livelihood because we have an overreaction. It's the jumping at the stick that you thought was a snake. That's a false positive, right? Because it's not a snake, but you jumped and it's a survival tool.
Yeah. But
And
but
again, the
as we've
reason why this
said,
is more feminine is because that is very useful when you have a small child,
yeah,
because everything is dangerous for a while.
and as we've said, it's not that either or any of these traits are bad or good or, worse or better. They are all valuable within their proper context, and provided you don't go too far outside the lines. It's like keep it in its lane. It's your example of the stick. It's if we've joked before about the meme of find the copperhead, and it's a pile of leaf litter in South Texas, and it's like there could be none, there could be 10, you don't know. It, if
But
you
okay,
let
yeah,
that
we'll keep it abstract with that example. Where can that go bad though? Okay, so I jumped at the stick and it wasn't a snake, but I have that false positive, so I tell the rest of the village don't go foraging in that area because there's snakes.
well, I was going to make
And
it
and all of a sudden we starve because that's where the fruit was,
well,
right? You
I was going
know,
to make it more concrete of so you don't get out there and help your mom out by clearing out her underbrush, which
yeah.
you don't do that when it gets dry in South Texas. And oh boy, are you in for trouble if there's a spark or a lightning strike or that gets out of hand fast.
Oh, we've we
So
we we had a real life example of that when the neighbor's yard caught on fire and the nice, groomed yard was very much spared. But it's
look,
so when that's why I brought it into this language is because sometimes it's good to be one, and sometimes it's good to be another. Fighting an infectious disease, you kind of want to err on the side of caution,
mhm.
and but getting back to economic prosperity and real life, well, we kind of needed a little of the other, and we needed decision makers that had some of this strength and some of this strength to come together and work together. And one of the things I think is misunderstood about us because we're just two dudes and assumptions are made is no, our main theme has been these two forces need to work together.
That's why
I'm
we've spent so
basically a
much of our
secular Buddhist, so you
yeah.
talk about yin yang, right? It's
That's why we've spent so much of our Saturday times, especially after we finished the series, going through it and talking about the actual series, and now we're talking about the themes. And so often the themes we're talking about with Wheel of Time are, I love that quote that I found from RJ. The theme that I keep harping on is men and women do their best when they work together. And here's an example of that of, oh, my eyeballs. I take my sunglasses off because those are their prescription, and they just have my distance on them because I really only use them for driving. So the computer screen is very fuzzy. Okay. So I stumbled upon this when I was scrolling through X the other day. He is a ship captain, a CEO of a shipping company. And he is also the author of a book called Fire on the Horizon, which was about the Deepwater Horizon fire, which for anyone who saw the Mark Wahlberg movie was actually pretty darn good. Accuracy, mostly, but anyway, um, you do see a touch of this in the movie of what this guy is talking about. Okay. Let me go ahead and share this for anyone who wants to follow along as I read through this because it's rather lengthy and it's very important and directly leads to not only what you talked about, but didn't when did you bring up that article, that study about how safetyizing playgrounds had no benefit or had negative benefit?
that was two ago. Yeah.
Yeah. So it,
Yeah.
it turned out that the
I think it's
parents were all worried about this, but
411.
the kids weren't, and it wasn't actually a problem. Um, And that's kind of what he's talking about here. All right. So reading from his post. Uh I wrote a book on the BP oil disaster, and there's a critical parallel with ICE protests in Minnesota that almost everyone is missing. When the Deepwater Horizon explosion dominated Twitter for months, the narrative was simple. BP, British Petroleum, cut corners on safety. That story was comforting. It was also wrong, dead wrong. Literally, people died. The disaster wasn't caused by too little safety, it was caused by safetyism. Before the explosion, HR and HSE departments, overwhelmingly filled with women who never worked a dangerous job in their life, became obsessed with eliminating all injuries offshore. Not major hazards, not catastrophic risk, all injuries, even minor cuts and bruises. Tens of millions of dollars, thousands of hours of paperwork, endless training modules. Everyone from dishwasher to captain was empowered to shut down a drilling operation costing millions per day to prevent a sprained ankle. Meanwhile, people with deep technical expertise, guys who actually understood blowout risk, were sidelined or fired for saying the obvious that HR induced exhaustion causes accidents, that drowning crews in paperwork makes them miss real danger. That spending money on back injury training means less money preventing explosions. Like the protesters in Minnesota, HR and safety became powerful, organized, coordinated via expensive software, mobile and completely detached from reality. One crewman reported a serious onboard fire that nearly killed someone. Nothing happened for weeks. When he kept pushing, a manager told him to shut the F up. He called HR to report, quote, the verbal abuse. Within hours, an executive helicopter full of HR quick reaction team launched from Houston. They didn't investigate the fire, they investigated him, the guy who called HR. Their conclusion? The man reporting the fire was, quote, repeatedly harassing the crew to report the fire, end quote. He was fired. A company wide HR memo publicly shamed him, all in the name of safety, quote unquote, safety. Here's the truth they refuse to accept: offshore drilling is dangerous. You cannot extract tens of millions of barrels of oil without injuries and, yes, sometimes death. Now apply that lesson to Minnesota. Law enforcement is dangerous. You cannot deport tens of millions of people without injuries and, yes, sometimes deaths. Yes, Renee Good was shot. Yes, Alex Preddy was shot. Yes, ICE operations result in injuries. And yes, people will be hurt by ICE this year. But HR didn't eliminate injuries offshore. They just reclassified them for statistics, exhausted the workforce, and made people afraid to report real problems, setting the stage for a major explosion. It's exactly what's happening now. ICE agents are being forced to waste time protecting identities, managing feelings, navigating activist volunteers, and hesitating rather than acting decisively when seconds matter. Every minute an agent loses sleep worrying about this is a minute less rested. Every hour spent on crowd management training is an hour not spent on training to manage violent criminals. And worse. I'm a ship captain. I was trained to make the hardest choice, to do the most good for the most people. I was taught that one day I might have to send a fire team into a space they won't come back from to buy passengers 10 more minutes to reach lifeboats. That's the job. Numbers matter. Yes, Renee Good was shot. That's tragic. But it pales next to the hundreds killed by violent illegal immigrants under Biden. It's nothing compared to the thousands who died between the Darien Gap and Mexico. It's microscopic compared to the 400,000 fentanyl deaths, many in ICUs like the one Alex Preddy worked in. Yes, some children were separated from families, but far fewer than the number raped, killed, or abandoned between the Darien Gap and Mexico under Biden. The hard truth is this: safetyism caused the BP explosion. Safetyism has killed millions. Safetyism is killing this nation right now. And I would add to that, not just the nation, I think that is a major problem in the West in general.
Hmm.
And when I say the West, I don't just mean, you know, Western Europe and the United States. You look at the westernized, advanced, industrialized areas outside, like South Korea, Taiwan, Japan, Singapore, they're all having similar problems. I mean, the literal metal drummer that was just elected prime minister of Japan. Did you hear about this?
No,
The
no.
new prime minister of Japan, she is a drummer in a metal band, among other things, which is freaking awesome. And one of her points is to a lot of what is happening here is also happening there on a smaller scale, but it's still happening. It's still having an impact. And that was her platform. And that's why she was elected, because it's not just happening here. It is happening everywhere. This ideology has infested our institutions.
That's kind of where I was gonna go before you brought that up was the ideology and institutions because I have this article from Fire. You're familiar with Fire, right?
Yeah, they're one of those places that I wouldn't mind working for once I'm done getting my
Yeah, yeah. So it's freedom
studies done.
of what is it? Freedom of God, something and expression. Uh,
Yeah.
but they basically one of the things they do is rate colleges on their freedom of expression ability and I'm going to bring that up here in a second. But the headline here from one of their articles is male students show more tolerance for political enemies than females show for their own allies.
Mm,
So again, we're talking about institutions becoming one or the other instead of working together. And if we look at this and take it at face value here, and then that institution is feminized, well, what's the danger that goes with that? And the danger that goes with that is you're going to lose freedom of expression, which is what fire fights for, right? So females are even more likely to shoot down something they consider harmful that they agree with than males are to accept something that they consider they disagree with and let it happen, like speakers on campus.
mhm.
And so
That,
they,
that that is one of the places where fire got started, were these, you know, 15 years ago when this really started to heat up. No pun intended, because I hate puns. Uh, was speakers either being canceled or not being able to speak because they were being drowned out by shouting students.
mhm.
And then also these kind of kangaroo courts where, some student, usually a guy, would say something back to your early example of the, hey Susie, how you doing? And oh my gosh, he's hitting on me, let me run to HR. Similar things were happening on college campuses where young men would approach young women, or they would have a lot of this started with the quote unquote sexual assault, which was really just, oh my gosh, I was drunk, I had sex, I regret it. You were assaulted. Okay, let me go report that. And these young men were being dragged into these kangaroo courts, which were very Maoist and Stalinist in how they operated. And that's where FIRE, which I just looked up because I also brain farted on it, Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression.
I could not remember what the I was. I was.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's where they got started, and why. And
Is Greg Lukianoff was who started it, and he wrote "Coddling of American Mind" with Jonathan Haidt. But the main thing here is the back to our masculine feminine is the feminine is basically saying, "Oh my gosh, somebody can be hurt like this, shut it all down." And it doesn't matter if they agree or not. They're just saying, "Oh, somebody could get their feelings hurt, so shut it all
mhm,
down." And the guy is just like, "Yeah, let them talk. What's the worst they can do? They'll probably actually look stupid up there."
mhm,
And that's kind of the two put them in like uh, everyday language, that's what you're getting is, oh my gosh, it may be harmless, but just in case, stop it.
mhm.
Versus, what's the harm? It's just someone talking.
Yeah.
I don't care. I don't agree with what they say, but they're just gonna look dumb up there.
This is why
That's the
one of
masculine
the
versus the feminine thought
this is one
process.
of the many reasons I love Mike Rowe, because he's way smarter than he comes across, because he's like subtle, brilliant. And 20 years ago, when he was doing Dirty Jobs, he made this point before the term safetyism even came into the public, because he did an episode called Safety Third, because he was talking with all these blue collar guys that worked in
Hmm.
machine shops and worked, and I don't remember exactly where he was when he came up with this idea, but he's talking to all these guys and he's like, this idea of safety first, if it was safety first, you couldn't do your job, could you? And they were like, yeah, this job is inherently dangerous.
Hmm. Well, and then there's the two mindset sets. We've talked about it as far as fathering versus mothering. When they're very, very, very little, you protect them from everything, right? Don't pick that up. Don't put it in your mouth. Don't put your fork in the freaking, electric socket.
Hmm.
All of those things. And that's necessary because babies are stupid. Okay. They're uneducated, we'll say. They have no life experience.
Their
So they
brain
don't,
is literally still forming.
yeah, they don't know electricity is in that socket until they stick metal thing in there, right?
Hmm.
But then what do we do with training? We make the athlete strong enough to handle the sport. And so there's a shift there. You protect them from the danger, but then you train them for life. And one of those is a very feminine trait because you're taking care of very small children. Where the other one is, I have to teach my son how to hunt or his family's not going to eat. And by the way, we're still with woolly mammoths and saber-toothed tigers at this time.
Hmm.
So yeah, like 9 out of 10 boys don't make it. But I'm going to make him the best boy he can be so he can go out and hunt. And so we have to have that flip. And again, going back to institutions, which one's better? Education, which is where I'm at now because this is also fire. They rank the top colleges and the bottom colleges all the way through 257 schools on freedom of expression and independence on campus. And for those that can see it on the left side, we have the best overall scores. It breaks my heart that the best score was an 80 out of 100. The best our country could do was a B, barely. Okay. But on the right, we have the worst. 257 is Barnard College. And so in this preparing for this conversation, I was like, I wonder what the leadership looks like. And I said,
Well,
okay.
and right below that is one of the most prestigious universities in the country, Columbia University, which has been in the news recently.
hmm Well, let's look at the top five universities for overall score. Oh, we got Claremont University, President Hiram Chodosh. I don't know how to pronounce that, but male. Purdue, Mong Chiang, male. University of Chicago, Paul Alivasatos. Michigan Technological University, Richard Kubek, and Todd Salimon from University of Colorado. Those were the top five for freedom of expression, for being able to express yourself on campus, having speakers. They have their whole rating system. Go to fire.com, I think, or .org, maybe
.org. Yeah.
.org, yeah. And you can get those criteria. And actually those grades, I'm going to link that page itself because you can click on the grade and it tells you why those
Hmm.
schools got the grade. See, like we look at Claremont is number one out of 257, ranks highly across almost every major criteria. The school ranks in the top 10 for self-censorship, which means you don't self-censor if you're in the top 10. You don't self-censor yourself. Administrative support. Okay, so the administration is supporting of different viewpoints. Comfort in expressing ideas. The students and faculty feel like they can bring their ideas forward, even if controversial, and openness. And it also places in top 50 for disruptive conduct, which is actually like the people trying to shout down speakers and stuff on campus. But the thing is, there's a balance there because you also have to respect their freedom of speech when they're trying to stop somebody else's freedom of speech. So you're kind of playing both sides on that one. I can understand how that would be a hard one to score high on. But again, we have a trend there. The top five have very kind of old school uh, academic credentialed leadership where it's like, you're here to learn. You're not here to be protected.
Hmm. Well, like the former president of Harvard that Helen Andrews talked about as the beginning
Hmm.
of the great feminization theory, that he was run out of town for saying something that was supposed to be off the record and also not even remotely controversial.
Oh, well, and now let's start at the bottom.
Oh dear.
Oh, what do we have here? We have a feminine view on academics. I'm not going to assume her gender, but we have a feminine view. Columbia. Oh my
uh,
goodness.
uh, female presenting,
Yes.
shall we say? Yes. Let's be
Then
proper
this
here.
this was the third. What was the third? Hold on. University of Washington. So male, yes, but his predecessor for 10 years. So he just took over this last year. Predecessor for 10 years, feminine view. Uh, then now we're getting now as we get to Northeastern, I had to look up what this guy's good at with experiential education. I have no idea. But he's a product of the Department of Education, which is the most woke department in all of
Uh,
schools. And nope, I was looking up other stuff there. Okay, so those were the bottom five. So we have a very kind of academics is a place of learning and you can't do that without a little risk versus everybody should be protected and we need to not have anything that's going to disrupt anybody mentally in that environment kind of situation. So again, I'm not saying that one is better than the other. I'm saying is we can't have one take over all the institutions because you need the diversity of those viewpoints to find the right blend to bring it all together.
so I have a I have a good example of this because I've talked about this before about look there when it comes to physical things there are going to be spaces where most women most of the time shouldn't be. And if you don't agree with that, then go back however many episodes where we showed the clip of the female bodybuilders versus the male dwarfs. Okay. But that mentality is important. It does help. And again, back to Robert Jordan and the Wheel of Time, the theme I've been harping on this whole time is that men and women do their best work when they work together. So, as an example,
Well,
um,
yeah, go ahead and give your example, and then I'm going to give you a great example of the exception to the rule.
so my wife has now made it up to the level where she is responsible for firing people if that has to be done. Okay. And they have this whole process they have to go through, all very heavily influenced by HR, Joy. But so uh, she had to fire this person, and it involved a meeting. It's it's on Zoom or whatever, so it can be recorded just in case. They have to go through all these steps, blah blah blah, and you have to have someone, an upper manager, a senior manager watching in on it. And when it was done with, um, and then she also had her former boss watching in because he wanted to see how she did it. When it was done, the senior manager said, "How did you do that?" And she said, "What are you talking about?" He thanked you when you were done firing him. Well, and to her, it was like, well, yeah, because I helped him along the way. Because there's like this, months long process where you're basically on probation, and I helped him all along the way. And then when we got to the end, I told him what he knew what to expect, and I made sure that he understood the process going forward from here and all this stuff. And he knew I did the best I could for him and all this. And then her old boss chimes in and goes, "I just fired someone, and he went off on a like we thought we were going to have to call security. He was so pissed off and yelling at me." And she's like, "Well, what did you do before you got to that point?" Because
Hmm.
men are very direct. It's the thing, and then it's the next thing, and then it's the next thing, and it's the next thing. And she's looking at the bigger picture and saying, "Well, hold on. What were you doing beforehand? Did that person feel supported by you previous to that going forward? Were you there for them?" That is a very feminine thing, to be there for someone. It's like Bill Engvall has this great bit where he goes in, He tells his wife, he'd met this, friend at the gym. They were working out together, and he goes home and he tells his wife, "Oh man, did Sarah and Joe are getting divorced?" "What? No, what happened?" He's like, "Oh yeah, I was just working out with Joe, and he told me they're getting divorced." "Why?" He's like, "I don't know. You didn't ask?" "No, it was my set." I said, "Okay, spot me." And so that's my bit whenever my wife yells at me for like when she asks for more information. I'm like, spot me. I always tell her that because we saw that bit together, and it so perfectly encapsulates the male mind. Well, that's where it's helpful to have that feminine mind to say, hey, what you should ask this. You should
Hmm.
do this, you know, because that's just not the way we are usually wired. Our brain is usually, oh man, that sucks. All right, spot me.
Yeah, but also I'm going to go into kind of where it can go wrong then too, because you look at how HR is done,
Mm,
and you see this in relationships too. This is why, again, I love studying relationships because everything's a relationship. Your
mm,
relationship with your
mm-hmm,
boss, your relationship with the car salesman that's selling it to you, the building of rapport, your church friends, your regular friends, everything is a relationship. And we saw those numbers on women reporting I was with a narcissist, I was with a psychopath, and everything. They kind of need that to break up.
mm.
They need that thought in their head because they feel bad about the breakup. That, if you know, think about any upstanding guy. I was going to say nice guy, but we've ranted about, how nice guys aren't nice. But think of any upstanding guy that's had exes. Do they talk bad about their exes? No, they just say it didn't work out. Whereas every female you talk to, it's like, oh yeah, well he was this, he was that, da, 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 he did this to me, da, 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 da. And I'm like, it's one of those red flags. If they talk bad about every ex, then that means they're the problem, right? Well, we see that in HR, which is in the olden days. Remember the guy, the chainsaw? He was well known for going into companies and just doing the firing.
Oh yeah, yeah.
A company would be dying, financially, and they're like, we have too much bloat, I don't, and we can't figure it out. And he would go in and he would just psychopathically look at the numbers and say, okay, these people need to go, cut it off. And he would go in and be like, you're a detriment to the company. See ya. You're a detriment to the company. See ya. You're a detriment to the company. See you. But with modern HR, there's always has to be like a multitude of reasons of how you're toxic to the workplace. And it's not just, well, you're costing more than you're making for the company. That's a masculine decision right there. Whereas, oh, he's costing more or he or she is costing more to the company than they're making, but they're so nice. I don't want to go in there and, let them go. And oh, did they have a child? And oh, I mean, that already have depression, and I don't want it to get worse. And we've gone to that new environment where it was just, hey, this is a company. They call it corporate psychopathy for a reason. This is a company that is designed to make money. Either make it money or don't make it money. And that sounds harsh, but
Mm-hmm.
if you let that person who's leeching the company stay, you're actually hurting everybody else in the company because you're trying to be nice to that one person because you like them.
Yeah, this is again, I've referenced this before, but my petite little adorable wife, who's and it had never dawned on me until you said Nynaeve is the most masculine character in Wheel of Time, because physically she's not even remotely the most masculine looking character in the Wheel of Time, but the way she acts. And another example of that with how my wife is very masculine thinking is she's run into that once she reached that position where she has to hire and fire people. And she is of the mentality of, why do I have to look for reasons to check these boxes? How about, look, you're doing good work, but it's just not good enough for us. I'm sorry, we have to let you go. Why isn't that a good enough reason? Especially in
Hmm.
Texas, which is an at-will state. It's, look, you did your best. It wasn't good enough. We're going to have to let you go. I'll write you the best recommendation I can based off the work you did and wish you luck in the future.
Yeah, and
Why
add
isn't that good enough?
add to that the multiple layers of the oppression Olympics, you know, where, oh, well, society is against these people, so I have to give them more breaks. And it's like, I'm not going to name the company, but I knew a person who was management at he was a good friend and a client, management at a car rental company, which I will not name, but they had we'll call it a pressed class employee that they were on write up number 14 for major events,
Gosh.
not just like was 5 minutes late from their break or something. Like didn't show up for work or fudged documents, that kind of stuff. They were on write up 14 and they were still contemplating whether they could let this person go because said person in the oppression Olympics, daddy was a lawyer, which
Oh,
already should
jeez.
tell you you're not oppressed. But it that's the meme. Hey, my daddy's a lawyer. Let me off this ticket, right? But it was that's the layers we've added to this because of compassion, empathy, all of these things. So again, that's good. We want to have empathy. We don't want to be the chainsaw all the time. But at the same time, what level of that is needed to protect the other employees? And what level of that is going too far? Well, we're never going to get there if we let one side take over or the other,
Yeah.
because we're only going to get one perspective. And that's what we're starting to get right now. That's why she wrote the article.
Well, and geez, who did I? Crap. Who was I? Oh, it was it's the other British guy, not 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 Williamson, not Modern Wisdom. The other British guy you listen to, Diary of a
Diary
CEO.
CEO, yeah, Stephen,
Yeah,
yeah,
and he was talking to.
Stephen Bartlett.
He called him Dr. K. I can't because his
Yeah,
his
Dr.
name is,
K's that's what he goes by. That's his handle is Dr. K.
and he's got a
Yeah.
name that's hard to pronounce if you're a basic white
And
guy.
that and that's not just us. He says it himself. He says, I go
Yeah.
by Dr. K because nobody could pronounce my name.
But he is a psychiatrist,
Hmm.
and the clip I watched was they were talking about Andrew Tate,
Hmm.
and this was from a year ago, of why is this guy so popular. And Dr. K's point was, well, the main reason he's so popular is because people keep saying to the boys and young men who are listening to him, that's bad, you're bad, stop it. Rather than, why is this person appealing to you?
Hmm.
And the one of the ways he made this point is, what happens if you, a man, complain that life is hard? And as I can't remember his name, the Diary of the CEO guy,
Stephen. Yeah.
Stephen said, you're told to shut up. What do you have to complain about?
Hmm.
And he's not even a white guy, so he at least checks one box in the oppression Olympics. But heaven forbid if you're a straight white guy and you're complaining about life.
I
And
mean, he's
he
a multi-millionaire before he started his podcast because of startups and,
exactly,
and
yeah, he's
entrepreneurship. But
yeah, very sharp dude. Um, but that was his point, and Dr. K was, yeah, exactly, is no one wants to listen to you. In fact, if you complain, you're told, shut up. What do you have to complain about?
hmm.
And so you have this incredibly imbalanced idea. And it just so happened that I don't even remember who I saw share this with.
Well, let me hit that point a little deeper too,
Okay,
because
go ahead.
this is one of the most misunderstood things, and this is as males we can look at the feminist speakers too. Is 95% of everything they say is true. It's that 5% where they jump the shark.
Mm,
And so if you're frustrated and you're being told to shut up and sit down as a male, and you come across because of the interwebs, Andrew Tate, he's going to look like a god to you, especially if you're young and impressionable, right? It's that 5% that you're like, wow, okay, now we've jumped the shark. But if you're already, it's like joining a cult. If you're already infatuated with the 95%, that he's speaking truths that you feel every day in your life, and then he says something you don't quite agree with, you're going to let it slide. You're going to go ahead and let it slide and be like, that guy's spitting facts. That guy's spitting. And same thing with feminism, because there was a lot. I mean, there's still a lot of issues between men and women that need to be resolved, and maybe they never will be because there are differences between us.
hmm
But
But we at
Yeah,
least need to recognize and address and talk about and think about.
yeah. So feminist leader, Mary Harrington, one of the original feminists that's speaking against feminism now because she thinks it's ruining the work she did. She 98% of what she says, I'm like, uh-huh, 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 uh-huh. And then she'll say something and I'm like, yeah, maybe you need a guy perspective on that one, you know. But you listen to the people you don't agree with and actually listen to them. I watched 3 hours of Andrew Tate the other day on Valuetainment, who
Hmm.
is very combative. They're very combative when they talk to somebody, but they do respect him. So they're respectfully combative of him. And you're like, wow, okay, this is not the version you get on TikTok. And if you can't sit and listen to that, you've already got a bias. And I'll do the same for, I mean, I don't know, uh, Rosie O'Donnell or something, if she's in a good environment or watching the Peterson versus what's that, not the one that blew him up, but there was a second interview and I'm blanking on the name, Kathy, not, no, Kathy was the original, Kathy Newman.
Yeah.
What, Mary something, I think, but they went back and forth for about 4 hours in a conversation, and I'm like, yeah, she's making good points. Oh, he's making good points. Oh, going back and forth. And if you can't sit and listen to that, you've already shown your bias in your
Hmm.
head. And if you're a young and impressionable individual, whether you're male or female, we're just talking about the bias. Do you have a negativity bias? Do you have false negatives? Do you have false positives? Well, whichever one you have is going to determine what message gets cleared through to you. If someone says, "Oh, okay, medicine is something ruined." This is a real experience with a client. He got dizzy, passed out one day, and cardiologists, and he has fantastic insurance. I wish I had this insurance because actually do have cardiac problems, but they were like, "Oh, well, let's use every tool we have because we're going to get paid." And he was doing procedure after procedure after procedure. He was probably just dehydrated that day. But I mean, and then at some point, I was looking at these procedures going, that's slightly invasive. You're getting a cardiac catheter done to check for blockages. That's not risk free.
Hmm.
And you got to take a week off from doing anything because you have a hole in your leg in one of the the major arteries that you can bleed out if you bust it open.
Hmm.
Is this really necessary? You just passed out one day. And every girl in the room, when I said that, said, just in case. You want to do it just in case. And I'm like, I just said he could bleed out and die. What happens when that
I
happens?
I had a similar experience like a couple years after my work accident that busted up my back. I was having severe GI problems. And I went through all these tests and I had a doctor said, with what you're describing, it could be this. I'm on an ultrasound something. I don't remember what. And so I went through a number of tests and then finally I got in to see a GI specialist. And I'm talking to him about what's going on. And he's going, uh-huh, uh-huh. And he's flipping through my chart and he's flipping through my chart. And he's like, how long have you been taking these prescription NSAIDs and Vicodin? And I told him, well, since I had this work injury and I've had this chronic pain, he said, stop taking those for a week and then let's see what happens. Problem solved.
Problem solved.
Like that's all it took. It's like, yeah, you're taking some heavy duty medications that are wrecking your gut. Stop it. Okay, we're done here.
Yeah. Well, and another conversation with the exact same group of people that I was just talking about, older, more mature. We'll use USAA terms when we had to talk to the clients. More mature person goes into the eye doctor for cataracts, looking at her cataracts and everything, and the eye doctor's telling her these things develop when you're a baby. So anything that's a problem now happened when you were a baby. Female eye doctor too. And oh, well, you should have your child wear sunglasses all the time. Well, what are we doing to that child developmentally?
Mm,
The answer is we don't know. If you're going to start putting, it's probably something to the degree of uh, putting sun lotion on somebody all the time. Well, now you're not getting any vitamin D, so you're crushing their immune system while they're young. Well, putting those sunglasses on all the time, is your baby sleeping well at night? Do we have good circadian rhythms? Are we disrupting that? And the answer is I don't know. But I could say that makes very good biological sense because a little sunshine in the presence of your eyes in the morning will set your circadian rhythm. So if you're taking a small child and making it to where they can't get those rays in their so they're probably not producing any melatonin before they go to bed, and they're going to have disrupted sleep cycles. And if you have disrupted sleep cycles, your brain doesn't develop properly. Again, the answer is I don't know, but overprotectionism probably is not the way because it's not what we adapted to do.
Well, that leads me to the other half of my point that I was getting at a minute ago, and you wanted to stay on the guy part of it. But the other half of that, the other half of our species, is so it just so happened that I had seen a short clip that kind of um complemented that Diary of a CEO clip I was talking about, where oh shoot, I'm brain farting on his name. The big, literally big, and also metaphorically big motivational speaker guy who looks like the
Tony
Giga
Robbins,
Chad cartoon. Tony Robbins. Yeah. He was
who's also been through his share of controversy with Me Too type feminists.
well, he was talking to a young woman.
Yeah.
And the so basically what he was saying, I'll paraphrase, is did you have a good relationship with your father? Did you have a good childhood growing up? And oh, absolutely, absolutely. He was great. I bet he often told you you're his little princess. He treated you wonderfully. He treated you like you could do no wrong. He's like, your dad was well-meaning, but he did you a tremendous disservice
Hmm.
because now you're out in the real world and the real world doesn't work that way.
Yeah, and that's one of the misunderstood things in we always rail on Instagram psychology, right? Is the treating her like a princess versus treating her like a man. Because it is true to say that your dad is your window into how you should be treated by men. But there's a difference between spoiling somebody
Hmm.
and them growing up to try to find a guy who is going to do that to them the entire time. Another one of my clients is having trouble with an employee. She's high up management in a company, and the employee is spoiled rotten. She's like, "Oh, I can only work these 3 days at this time and this time and this time. Oh no, I can't come in extra in the holidays. It's retail. Everybody knows if you work retail, you work extra in the holidays. You know all that." And dad comes and brings her a coffee every morning, and then comes and brings her a smoothie at lunchtime, and it basically he dotes over his daughter, even though she's 28 years old, right? So yeah, there's a difference between spoiling them, they're your little princess, or treating them like they should be treated, but also being firm and assertive with them when they need to do something that is growing up, right?
Well, that's kind of where I wanted to wrap it up because we talked a lot about a lot of big picture things here, but we whenever possible like to try and wrap it up on the small scale of what can you, the individual, do just within your own, because when you have such a systemic problem, it's really going to have to be fixed from the bottom up. It's not going to be fixed from the top up. Top down solutions rarely actually fix the
Hmm.
problem. So, and I'm guilty of this, and I have to catch myself doing this because I've not only got a daughter, I have two granddaughters, and especially with the granddaughters, you want to spoil them rotten. That's what's so fun about being a grandparent. Is like,
Yeah,
here
well,
you
and a
go.
little
They're
bit of that is okay. And as a guy, if you're dating, you should show up with the flowers. You should do those things. Some of it's okay, but then you also have to be man enough to say, you know what, you want to do this trip that we're not financially ready for. So no, we can't do that right now. But let's go ahead and hunker down. Maybe a year from now, we'll do that trip that you wanted to do. But let's take care of X, Y, Z. The ACs are out. You know, your car is like acting like dumb, so we need to get that fixed. You know, and you have to be able to do both. You have to come in and spoil,
yep.
and you have to come in and be real.
Well, that's what I was getting at is how do you talk to, because especially now and I would imagine that for anyone out there who is younger than we are, it is probably a lot worse of how do you tell a young woman no? how do you disagree with her? How do you tell her she's wrong without her immediately getting, as the kids would say, triggered?
Yeah, that's a tough question, especially if we piggyback on our sexless marriage conversations and stuff. Because how many times does a man crumble because he wants to get laid?
Hmm.
Which is a very short-sighted strategy. Because if you are that man, eventually she will lose respect for you. And a woman will not sleep with a man she does not respect. Something that Andrew Tate is right about. A woman will not sleep with a man she does not respect. And yeah, you may get the initial, she may get the win and you get the initial sneaky fucker type sex. But down the road, your relationship will die
Hmm.
because she will start looking for a man she respects or start complaining about you, start being bitter, the key word, resentful that you are not a man. So again, it's that there's a fine line. And this is where I think that those numbers where they're overestimating these bad triad things is women also don't know. Men don't know how to assert themselves properly, respectfully, and women don't know the difference between a man having boundaries and being abusive. I don't know. This is the impasse right now. And part of it is social media is making it. I think we will level. I think we will level out. Social media is so new in our existence. You and I didn't grow up with it.
Hmm.
Our prefrontal cortexes were fully developed as much as just the actual brain matter goes before the smartphone existed. What a smartphone 2008, right?
I
2008,
believe the first
2009. Yeah.
iPhone came out earlier than that. I think it was like
Cause no,
2006.
because it was Blackberries before that.
No, it would have been after 2006 because it was,
Facebook was like 2008, I think.
yeah. I keep track of things by who was born and who died when.
MySpace was like
'Cause that's old.
2005, but that was on a you were
Yeah.
on a computer for that.
Yeah, yeah. That
Yeah.
see, to me,
You know,
that's
you
the
you
thing
know your
is the,
MySpace account is still there.
oh wow.
I found it and I'm like, oh my God, that was you at 25 years old? Really? But but yeah, so
Yeah.
no, our I mean, we're living in a world we didn't adapt for. Some people are growing up in it and it's
2007 was
dysfunctional.
when the first iPhone was released.
Yeah.
So,
So we have phases. We didn't grow up with it and we're adapting to it.
mhm.
Kids are growing up to it with parents that were never adapted to it. And then we have another generation that will come up of parents that grew up in it having kids that are in it. And I think that's when it's going to start leveling out. But yeah, there's so much bad advice out there, but the bad advice is it's catchy because it makes you feel good in the moment. Hey, I use this example all the time. Shoot some morphine inside you and you're going to feel good. It doesn't mean it's good for you.
Mhm.
Instagram self-care advice feels good in the moment, but it's not good for you because we are a social animal, and things that are good for you also involve you being good to other people, and at least good enough yeah, I have to be careful how I word things because you can be the doormat as well, and it'd be
Yep.
bad for you,
Yeah.
you know. But pro social things are good for you. Having a social life is good for you. Having the proper amount of me time is good for you. Protecting yourself from other people is good for you. Balance, balance. And understanding other people is good for that. And I think that's where this discussion of was a great book written. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus. And this guy took so much flack because, oh, how dare you say they're different? We are different. Some are more like me, that are the opposite sex. Some are less like me that are the opposite sex. Some of that are my sex are less likely like me. But for the most part, we kind of sit in this the Venn diagram where there's a happy little spot in the middle where we can all meet. And I think that's important and it's fascinating to study, first of all. And
Mhm.
hopefully you got something out of this.
Well, since we did kind of end with a, geez, I don't know, that's a good question, but I don't know, is let's focus on that next time of,
Well, awareness is the first answer.
is the, yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah. Awareness is the first answer. I think I just went a long way to say that. Awareness is the first answer. Awareness of yourself, awareness of how other people think, and how there might be a mismatch there, and just say, you know what? maybe we're just thinking about this differently, and mine might be the excessive positive bias, and hers might be the excessive negative bias. Let's start there and then work up from that.
Well, let's I'm assuming our listeners skew male, but ladies out there would definitely appreciate your perspective on how does a guy disagree with you without you becoming reflexively hostile,
Hmm.
without it turning without a disagreement turning into a fight. And
Which is one of the really
we'll
tough
talk
ones
about that
though.
more
Yeah.
next time.
Yeah, and let's maybe tease that a little bit because when we do talk about narcissistic relationships, that reflexive emotionality is actually one of the red flags for it, but it's also kind of typical feminine behavior because, oh, your questioning of them already triggers the emotional response in and of itself. So how do we square that circle? Especially as men, oh, is she that way or is she just female? Is there a difference? Who knows?
All right. Well,
Yeah.
we will talk about that next Wednesday. And then Saturday, we were going to talk some more about fictional stories. We're going to talk some more Stranger Things, and we'll also probably weave in some Wheel of Time as comparison there for what worked and what didn't, and what was positive storytelling and what was negative storytelling.
Yeah, I had trouble labeling that last episode because it was, we did throw in some Wheel of Time, but it was predominantly Stranger Things. So who knows? We'll see what engagement we get out of it. Just having
Mhm.
the names in there would
And
help, but
I think Stranger Things is a good example of what we're talking about because with how fractured the media landscape has become over the past 10, 15 years with the rise of streaming services and the expansion of cable is you just don't have a Friends or a Seinfeld or whatever that often anymore. I mean, Game of Thrones was one of the last appointment television culturally impactful things that everyone quote unquote was talking about, and yet I would have to look at the numbers, but I doubt it even came close to the olden days when like a third, literally I think a third of the country every night was tuning in to watch the Cosby Show. That's how water cooler popular that was. Um, and I think Stranger Things is one of the few um, cross culture big event media things that has happened in a while. And I think that's why it's so useful to talk about because, okay, but then what were the lessons that people were learning consciously or subconsciously from the story that was being told?
yeah, about 13 to 18% of the country watched Game of Thrones. So not a third.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we will talk about that next time.
All right, later.